Magic the Gathering set for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Again, we are going to worry about constructed, limited, and flavor. I guess we don't worry about that one, we just kind of figure out what it is. I will kind of reference whether it's after rotation or before rotation, because generally speaking, with Throne of Eldraine around, it's hard to talk about before rotation. Like, very few things make it in Standard with Eldraine. Alright, so we're going to start with Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. When it enters the battlefield, you choose to target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard, and then roll a d20. You either put it on the top of your library, or you return it to your hand. So, this introduces us to the new roll a d20 mechanic. It took a lot of thought for me to consider whether or not rolling a d20 is good for the game. Because, like, let's just imagine this. Let's imagine the roll the d20 deck, because there's a full-on archetype here. Let's imagine that deck made it to constructed viability. Would that be good for the game? And my answer is yes, as long as rolling a natural 20 doesn't win them the game. If the deck is reliant on, like, okay, there's this effect that on a natural 20 is so good, it can basically win, like, let's imagine Vorpal Sword. There's a black card called Vorpal Sword, that one of its themes is it gives you, like, the touch of phage, so that if you hit someone, they lose the game. If that was based on gain a critical hit, like it is in D&D, if it was, when you hit, you roll a d20, on a natural 20, they lose the game, that would be bad. That would be bad for this. If gauging a natural 20 decided whether you win or lose, that'd be bad. Otherwise, I actually like these because, notice, this is a coin flip. If you lose the coin flip, you still get something. But if you win the coin flip, you get something better. Also, it's leveraged 5% more into the side of you winning. And then, so sometimes they do have natural 20 effects, but generally speaking, it's like, you know, it's, you may put that card on top of your library, return that card to your hand. On a natural 20, it's like, you put that to your hand, and can put another one on the top of your library. Like, it's not so insane, it's not, you may now cast all spells of your graveyard. It's not something insane. So, the fact that that's there means that these are actually, I think these cards are perfectly fine for constructed playability. In Limited, you do need a spell worth bringing back to your hand. That's good enough that you can put on top of your library. That decides, because it's a 5-mana 3/4, that's not a very good stat line. You've had to toss a coin before, right? Sean, I played Dungeons & Dragons myself. I've rolled plenty of natural ones to know the consequences of that. So, yeah, flipping a coin has been a mechanic, but it's never been a competitive mechanic. I think it was once, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I think they have a lot more built into this roll d20 than before. So I do think this is a good mechanic. I do think it's an alright mechanic, even in constructed. Okay, hold up. Let's talk about this card. Is this card going to see constructed play? I'm pretty sure there's a better card than it already in constructed. Oh, quick for lore, Aberrant Mind Sorcerers. Their 6th level, it's a sorcerer archetype, and its 6th level ability is to be able to cast spells using sorcery points instead of spell slots. So that actually works. That actually is pretty good with lore. The theme, and wouldn't exile it, because yeah, you keep casting it constantly. The whole thing is if you have multiple silent mana magic, you would cast the same spell over and over again. So that still works. With, you don't cast it from your graveyard, you actually, yeah, I like it. I like Aberrant Mind Sorcerer. Oof. Alright. Air Cult Elemental. So it's interesting that they add the word Air Cult Elemental, because there's a, what's the thing called? Actually, hold up. Just really fast, this will take me 5 seconds. Princes of the Apocalypse. I was planning to pull out the book to show you, but I just realized I left the book out. Oh, there's where the book is. Okay. But anyways, there's a book called Princes of the Apocalypse, which is a cult of elementalists. So, and their elementals are slightly different than the actual elementals. So the air cult elemental would be their specific air elemental they're summoning, because they're using a different kind of magic to summon it. They're calling on gods instead of just using arcane magic. It's complicated. I did not actually finish I've actually been hiding a bit of the story. I know the general synopsis. I have not actually played through the story because every time I've tried to play it through, I bought it so that I could be a player in that story. And every time, we get about 4 sessions in, and then the DM gives up. Alright, so let's read the theme itself. So it's a 6-mana 2/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 1 other target creature to its owner's hand. Alright, so limited, it's a big late-game bounce spell that lets you get through. And that's the theme. This card lets you get through. This card is part of your means to get a win condition. It's common. This is not construct. The prices are not good for constructed. But in limited, sometimes you just need that effect, and you just need a good body at the same time, and this does both. I don't think you run more than one. You get this as like, okay, I'm the top-end, tempo-y blue deck. This is very much a tempo card. It is not an aggro card. It is not a control card. It's not big enough to be a control card. It's not fast enough to be an aggro card. This is a tempo card. This is the definition of, this comes into play, and then I swing in because next turn I'm winning. If I didn't win the turn I played it. Alright. Arcane Investigator. 2 mana, 2/1. And then if you have a bunch of mana, you can pay 6 and roll a d20. On 1 through 9, you draw a card. Already good. On 10 through 20, you look at the top 3, put 1 into your hand, and the rest at the bottom. So, this is... So, limited, first of all, this is amazing. 2 mana, 2/1 is basically a bear. And then, the fact that if you get a bunch of mana, you could sink it into card draw? That's really good. Now, in Constructed, there's already one of these that costs 1 mana, and it gives 4 mana draw a card. And it's also a flyer, and it's also a rogue. So, and that's not seen play in the... Did that one already rotate out? I feel like I'm talking about a card that's already rotated out. Spectral Sailor, or something like that. Yeah, I think I might be talking about a card that's already rotated out. Nonetheless, the cost is not competitive worthy. The cost is too expensive for competitive. But it's a really cool ability. I'm trying to think of any lore stuff before I just move to the next. What are they using as a light? Huh. Bar the gates. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell. Venture into the dungeon. So it looks like what he's doing is he's... So I'm pretty sure teleportation circle and the like, you can't actually cut someone in half. Like you can close portals, but you can't close it with someone in between. I think you just get jerked into one side or another. Like mechanically speaking. I'd have to go check, but I know for a fact I cannot use teleportation circle as a guillotine. So that's an issue for the visual, but not an issue for the mechanic. So I think this card in limited, like, first of all, countering creatures is good enough in limited. Counter creature or planeswalker in limited basically says counter target spell. So in limited, this card's good enough. Constructed, very tech-like, and I'm not sure venturing is good enough. I'm not sure venturing is good enough in Constructed unless you're specifically the white-black adventures aggro deck. Black Staff of Waterdeep. Sorry. You may choose not to untap it, and you tap 2-tap, and as long as it remains tapped... Whoa. Target non-token artifact you control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature. So, there are some good 1-mana artifacts that you could probably use with that. Some good 2-mana artifacts. This is an artifact itself. So this could see play in the... what's the deck called? Dance of the Manse. Dance of the Manse decks, Esper, Doom Foretold, that sort of stuff could see Black Staff of Waterdeep just because it's another creature, just because it's a cheap artifact to play early. Yeah, I think this is a good card. So limited, you have to have the artifacts. You have to have the artifacts for this to see play in limited. For Constructed, this could make a deck archetype. For Constructed, this could bring back a deck archetype, or just like bring out some deck archetypes of its own. There is that 2-mana 2-1. We saw the white 2-mana 2-2 that could sacrifice treasures for 1-mana artifacts. That could bring out the black side of Waterdeep. Alright, lore-wise. I have not completed the Dragon Heist, the campaign that takes place in Waterdeep. But I know that Waterdeep is filled with a bunch of statues of heroes of the past, and like, one is like a drunkard, one is just champion. A bunch of different statues of heroes. My guess is this Blackstaff animates those statues to protect the city. That's my guess for what this Blackstaff is. I do not know the lore well enough to tell you otherwise, or if someone tells me better, but that's my understanding. Alright. Blue Dragon. Again, there's a dragon of every color. Just good uncommon cards. 7 mana, 5/5. When enters the battlefield, target creature gets -3/-0, another -2/-0, and another -1/-0. So first of all, 7 mana, 5/5, good enough for limited. This card is good enough for limited. The extra effect just stops their aggression, and could also allow you to be aggressive knowing they can't backswing or block and kill. Good effect. Good effect. Constructed. No. 7 mana. 7 mana. Not good and constructed. That's all I need to say. We already talked about dragons are the right color. Yeah. Lightning Breath works. Yeah. Don't really have much to say for flavor other than succeeded. Alright, Charmed Sleep. Enchant creature, you tap it and it does untap. The spell itself is called Sleep. I thought Sleep was getting reprinted. Oh well. Does what it needs to do. This is basically Blue's kill spell. This is effectively Blue's kill spell. Constructed, not playable. Limited, you see play. Alright. Clever Illumimancer. Mage Hand. I love this. This is a flavor. So technically, with how versatile his Mage Hand is, this might actually be an Arcane Trickster disguising itself as a wizard. 3 mana 2/3. You can tap it to untap another target permanent, activate only as a sorcery. And they made sure to make sure it wasn't named Clever Conjurer, so you can't infinite loop with it. But, limited. If you have a good effect for this tapping, untapping effect, this is definitely good. Oh, you can actually untap lands. Okay, this card's good. This card's a 3 mana 2/3, which is sometimes good enough. And then you could untap lands with a blue card, guys. You can untap lands with a blue card. Good enough and limited. Constructed, you need some super hyper combo for this to be worthwhile and constructed. I think there's just better cards. Yeah, for lore-wise, Mage Hand is just one of those abilities. Well, a lot of people underestimate. It's just a really good utility, and this is just a really good utility card. In much the same way. Contact Other Plane. So, 4 mana, draw 2 cards is this card's minimum. Great. That's playable. That's good. Then sometimes, it's scry 2, draw 2 cards. That's great. That's awesome. This is seen play in limited. Every once in a while, you get a natural 20, scry 3, draw 3 cards. I think this will see play in... If the roll cards deck is not an aggro deck, I think this will see play in it. If it's an aggro deck, it is still 4 mana, instant speed. You're holding this... This might see play in decks that don't roll dice. You might actually see play where you're holding up counter spells, and then they have nothing to counter. So you play this in hopes to scry 2, draw 2 cards, and sometimes even scry 3. I think Contact Other Plane is a great card, actually. I don't think decks have space for it unless there is a roll dice deck, but good card nonetheless. Demi-Lich. Alright, hold up. Contact Other Plane. I'm trying to think. So it is... Yeah, lore-wise, this is pretty accurate. It's not as cool of a visual. Like, this is much cooler of a visual than the actual Contact Other Plane spell. But that's good enough. It does the flavor. You go to the other plane, you look for knowledge, you find knowledge. Demi-Lich. Here we go. So Demi-Lich, if I remember correctly, this is what happens to a Lich when they don't have enough souls to devour. They become just a single skull that's alive by these crystals, and they're just forced to basically suck up souls to try to gain their power back so that they can become an actual Lich once more. I could be wrong on that lore, but that's pretty accurate to what I remember. they're actually very powerful. So the way I would explain it is they're far more threatening, like physically, but they lack the grand wizardry that makes the Lich dangerous. It's the 20 intelligence that makes a Lich dangerous. The Demi-Lich is a devastating spellcaster, but it's not a great wizard. You know, it's not a grand wizard, it's a devastating monster. Alright, so 4 mana 4/3. This spell costs a blue less to cast for each instant or sorcery spell you cast. When it attacks, you can exile instant or sorcery, which you're using to cast it, and you can copy it. You copy it, and you may cast the copy. And you may cast Demi-Lich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instant or sorcery. So this is basically... The way I would explain this is... what's that? There's a Phoenix that I can't remember its name right now. It's a 4 mana 3/2 with flying and haste. That as long as you cast 3 instants or sorceries, it comes back from the grave during combat. This is a lot like that, in which you could get a free 4/3, but here's the thing. The Phoenix, the reason that Phoenix deck got off the ground was because it's an aggro deck. It had a bunch of 3/2s with evasion through flying and attacked the turn they came into play. They were insane because of that. This does not have evasion. This is going to get chump blocked all day, every day. The power of this is the recursion of not just itself, but of any important instants or sorceries that you need to play. That's what makes this powerful. I think this card sees play, but it's not the win condition, it's the power condition. You play 4 copies of this in your kind of Izzet super speed deck, but you don't play it as the win condition. You play this as just another card that is really good and worth the slot. Yeah. I think that really says it. It's going to see play in Constructed. In Limited, I'm not sure you can actually pull this out. But yeah, mid-game this seems nuts. The deck wins before you make it to the late game. The deck is built to win before you make it to the late game. If it sees play, it is awesome. It's just where the previous one won you the game itself, this, I think, puts you into the position where you can win the game. This isn't go from, like, winning to win. This goes from neutral board state to winning, which is very important. I think this will see play. I definitely think this will see play Constructed, even in the current format. I think this could actually allow a deck to exist because of this card. I don't think that deck... I don't think this wins the game for it. I think this card is put in there because it's a good card, not because it's an insane game-winning card. This isn't the thing that wins the game. This is the thing that powers you so you can do that. Yeah. You're losing and now perhaps you're not. Something like that. Good. Yeah, that's a good example. That's a good explanation. Something like that. It doesn't win you the game. It helps you get there. Was actually the theme. It's my idea was even board state to winning, not losing to not losing. But it does that too. It's a 4/3. It's a good body. It's still a good body. Yeah. I think Demi-Lich will see play. Displacer Beast. And the flavor really tells you all you need to know about the lore of it. The only place you can be sure it's not is wherever it appears to be. Displacer Beasts are, the whole thing is you attack them with disadvantage. They're very hard to find. They're really hard to hit. When they enter the battlefield, you venture, and then you could also return it to your hand. Displacement works perfect. I guess they could be found in dungeons and stuff. It's a good card. It's a 3-mana 3/2 that ventures into a dungeon. That right there makes it playable and limited. In Constructed, as I said, it's not the black-white venture deck. It costs way too expensive to do the recurring. So that ETB has to be extremely powerful for displacement to be worth its while. That's good enough. It's good enough. Yeah, even if you don't displace, this is good enough in Limited, so it's seen play in Limited. Flavor-wise, I'm just glad the Displacer Beast is here. That's all it really is. Once you see the pictures of Displacer Beast, you'll be happy. The fact that I can bring up the Displacer Beast and you now know what I'm talking about is awesome. Alright. Genie Windseer. When it enters the battlefield, you roll a d20, you either scry 1, scry 2, or if you're super lucky, you scry 3. You're playing this, in case you're wondering, you're playing this because it's a 4-mana 3/3 flyer. That's awesome. That's good enough in Limited, and then it also scries like I'm gonna say an average of like 1.7 or something like that, because that is a 10 to 19 that is actually slightly more, that is as likely as these two, and then this. Wait, this is one more likely than this one, because this is 11 through 19 would have had these two be equal. So this is actually 10 through 19. So the Scry 2 is actually slightly more common than the Scry 1. So there's a card. Back in one of the limited formats I played, there was a 5-mana 3/4. That one because you play you Scry 2, and that was an amazing top end for the blue decks in that format. So this is just an amazing card as a common in limited. In constructed, I don't think this is good enough. You have to have an awesome effect for D20s being rolled in the first place for this to be considered. I don't see that. Alright, Dragon Turtle! Dragon Turtle! Oof, love Dragon Turtles. Lore-wise, it already wins. It already won in lore. It's the freaking Dragon Turtle. Heck yes. It's a dragon. It's also a turtle. It's not part of the chromatic set, but it is a dragon. Don't you dare deny that. And its ability, Drag Below. How beautiful. So it's a 3-mana 3/5 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you tap it and up to one target creature an opponent controls, but neither them or the Dragon Turtle untaps during the next untap steps. To play this card, the way I see playing this card is you're holding up a counterspell. They don't play anything worth countering, so you instead lock down one of their creatures. At the end of their turn, you lock down one of their creatures and have a 3/5 coming along the way. The fact that this is a 3-mana 3/5 is actually huge and allows it to see play in Constructed, I think. I think this might just see play Constructed as just a general all-around good card. Which is awesome! Which is awesome! We get the Dragon Turtle! Which Displacer Beast also saw some Constructed play. Oh well. Limited, good enough. Awesome. The fact that it taps itself definitely means this cannot be in an aggressive deck, but I think this is just a good value 3-drop in blue. That's good enough. That's good enough. The fact that it has flash. So you basically, the way I see it is you are holding this up, and you're holding up a counter spell as well. You're holding up some other effect, and just like, all right, well the other effect never triggered, so I'm going to drag below a creature they played this turn, and then I'm going to have this 3/5 active before their creature is active. Good card. Good card. Eccentric Apprentice. When it enters the battlefield, you venture. It's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer, so it's already a Wooddrake. At the beginning of combat, if you complete a dungeon, up to one target creature becomes a bird, a 1/1 bird until end of turn. So the thing is, this could stop one of their big blockers, or it could just allow you a little more damage through. In Limited, this is good. In Constructed, this is not part of the black-white deck, and I think that's all the death knell it needs. I do not see Realm of the Mad Mage, or whatever it's called, might see some Constructed if you can really get enough of these ventures. Like, I'm starting to get convinced by the blue venture cards. They seem pretty decent. I could see definitely someone pulling off a more controlling venture deck. But then again, this is combat on your turn, which means this is an aggressive card. Oh, and we gotta talk about my weird confusion. So remember how I talked about Dragonborn being like a Dragonborn Paladin being a Dragon Knight, and how that allows you to have a lot more like connections to Magic the Gathering. It can actually synergize with cards outside of Adventures of the Forgotten Realm. This is a Tiefling. How often do you see Tieflings in Magic the Gathering? Now, keep in mind, this could have been a human devil, the way half-elves are human elves. We could possibly do a devil tribal. That would be pretty cool. But this is a Tiefling. Does this have any tribal synergy? No, I don't think so. And that just feels weird to me. That just feels really weird to me. That's all. I don't I like how this is more precise. It's a Tiefling wizard in Dungeons & Dragons. But it's like, if we're going to sacrifice and make Dragonborn Paladins into just Dragon Knights, we should continue that path and make this Tiefling wizard into a devil wizard. I get it, Tieflings are not devils. Often it's a story of them fighting away their heritage. But, like, if we're, like, what's the story of Dragonborn's a dragon? The Tiefling could be devils. I Alright. Feywild Trickster. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. This card, I think, might make roll dice viable and constructed. Just, every time you play a card that does your main mechanic, you get a 1/1 flyer. That's going to... This will swarm. This will swarm. In Limited, do you have dice rolling? Yes or no? That decides whether or not you can play it. But yeah, this might actually... If the roll dice deck actually works... that means that the roll dice deck might have to wait for rotation because dies to Bone Crusher. 3 mana creature, but dies to Bone Crusher. Doesn't do anything when it comes to play. By the way, kills Bone Crusher in trades. This you can play. They can play their Bone Crusher. You can tap down their Bone Crusher, and you have a 3/5 by the time they have their 4/3. Dragon Turtle doesn't die to Bone Crusher. 10 out of 10 card. Fly. Alright. I wish this was Jump, but I guess Jump might already exist. I'm surprised Fly doesn't already exist. Enchanted creature has flying, surprise, surprise, and when it deals combat damage to a player, venture to a dungeon. So the reason I wanted it to be Jump is because Jump is the actual first level spell, and like what he's doing is he's jumping over a chasm, basically. Jump is what you use because you cannot afford to cast a higher level spell like Fly. You jump because you need to get through. I like this idea. I like the idea of it. I wish this was Jump. It feels like this could have just been Jump and it caused no effects. I like Jump. A lot of people don't like Jump. I like Jump. But yeah, so for Constructed, I mean, again, if they're... I'm starting to get convinced of like a blue-green Realm of the Mad Mage Adventures deck. I'm starting to get convinced of it as a possibility after rotation. Limited, I mean, this gives your creature evasion and gives you venturing, so yeah. Yeah, good in both. Good in both. Lore-wise, works. I just wish it was Jump, because Jump is the poor man's Fly, and that's what he's doing here. It's, when kids want Fly, Jump is your Fly that you have at home. But here, the difference is, it's good enough if you know what you're doing. Alright, Reslax, Illithid Scholar. So I find it interesting that all the Mind Flayers are horrors. Makes perfect sense. I find it interesting. Might actually work with Pyre of Heroes stuff with horrors. Anyways, whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to your hand. And whenever one more creature's controlled deal combat damage, you draw a card. So here's the awesome thing here. You can attack with a bunch of 1/1s, or like a bunch of cheap creatures, and anything that they block, you just return those to your hand, and the others get through. Like... This allows you to basically ninjutsu your way to victory. There might be a Grazilax deck. Like, this might spawn an archetype. Because you could just be kind of low to the ground aggressive. I don't think it will. In current constructed, no. Might have to wait till rotation. Limited, 3 mana 3/2 is good enough. This effect basically allows you to always win trades in combat. Like, as long as you're the aggressor, you win the trades in combat. Which is amazing. That's amazing. At least you don't lose trades. You don't win trades. You don't win every trade. You just don't lose trades. Good enough. Guild Thief. All right. What deals combat damage to a player? Put +1/+1 counter on it. Tap 4. It can't be blocked this turn. In Limited, this can work as a finisher. In Constructed, you have much better rogues. That's basically it. I don't really have much more to say. It's just, in Constructed, you have, like, the rogue deck in Constructed just breaks everything. Even after that's gone, that's a lot of mana to be investing for such a slow clock. So let's see, 1, then 2, yeah. So, we'll count out its damage, so 1, 3, so when it gets to 2, then it gets to 3 counters, that's going to bring it to 6, 10, so it needs to get to, it needs to attack with 5 +1/+1 counters to land the killing blow. So it needs to attack... Yeah, it kills on turn 8, assuming you're attacking even one... Assuming you're attacking every turn, and it's not getting blocked on the turns you can't spend that mana, it doesn't win till turn 8. So it's slow. But it's a win condition that's good enough and Limited a lot of times. Alright. Imrith, Desert Doom. 5/5 flyer for 5. Good. It has Ward 4 as long as it's untapped. Really good. When it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. If you have fewer than 3 cards on hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Imarith goes with Grazalix. Just a fast, you dump your hand with a bunch of small creatures, swarm the board, swing in. And this is the top end. That's amazing. This is a constructed deck once rotation occurs. I think this is a constructed deck once rotation occurs. I don't even need to see the rest of the cards. There's just too much power here. Limited, amazing. It's card draw. It's a 5/5 flyer for 5. Like, this is amazing. Alright. Mind Flayer. Ooh. Gain control of target creature as long as you control Mind Flayer. Hey, look! It's a fix to Agent of Treachery. You can't just bounce it and grab every single card they have, including lands. Limited, having a 5-mana 3/3 that also takes their best creature is good. Constructed, 5 mana for this effect is... 5 mana for... Oh, be safe, do well. You too, man. Gotta see you later. See you later, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here, Shanzo. Alright. So, I think in Limited, this is definitely good enough. It takes over a creature. Like that, gain control of a creature is like a removal that also makes a creature. Keep in mind, if you just hold Mind Flayer on the back end until they kill off their own creature in the process, you're good. Doesn't die to Bone Crusher. That sort of stuff. And yeah, Dominate Monster, I think, is a perfect description of telling you how this ability works lore-wise in Dungeons & Dragons. This is why this effect is why Mind Flayers are scary. They'll just, if they don't devour your brain, they'll do something like this to your allies. This is why Mind Flayers are scary in Dungeons & Dragons. I like this card. I like this card. Alright, and we get Mordenkainen, the Great Mage. So many spells. Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion. Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound. Yes, you are a good boy. You very faithful. Just, Mordenkainen is a very popular guy. Mordenkainen's sword sucks in 5th edition, but I think that's more 5th edition's problem, not Mordenkainen's. Alright. 6 mana Planeswalker. +1. Draw 2 cards. Then put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. So it's draw plus filter. Like, it's +1 card plus filter. And it's a +2 effect. So, they need to be strong for 6 mana, but that is strong. Let me tell you that now. This is so, like, right there, I'm already happy. Kind of happy. Then we have -2. And it's Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound as a spell. Aw, makes my heart joy. Oh, yes. Create a blue dog illusion creature token. With this creature's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of cards in your hand. So in case you're wondering, Mordenkainen's Faithful Hound, I'm pretty sure it's actually invisible in the game, but it's just a nice little good boy that protects an area. You choose an area and protects that area and bites anything that gets close. And it's a pretty good spell. The whole thing of the spell is it locks down an area. As long as it doesn't really move around with you, it just locks down an area, and if they try to approach, it wrecks them. That's basically how the spell works. That's a -2. Keep in mind, twice the number of cards in your hand. That's a big boy. That's a big doggo. Oh my gosh, it's a doggo for dog tribal. I just realized that's actually hilarious. But yeah, twice the number of cards in your hand. I think this will be strong when it needs to see play. It's big enough body by far. And the +2 just drawing you cards. Amazing. The fact that you can use the -2 twice if you just think you're facing too much aggression. Great. The fact that the illusion doesn't get sacrificed when it's targeted or something stupid like that. Like, all beautiful. All beautiful. And then if you get to -10, you just win the game. It's Enter the Infinite. You draw, you exchange your hand and library. And then you get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. If you don't win the game from there, you have issues. Anyways, good card. I guess if you get milled, it makes it so that you wouldn't win the game from there. Anyways, yeah, good card. The big problem is that costs 6 mana. In Limited, slam dunk, this is your bomb. Constructed, meta's just too aggressive right now. The meta will have to slow down, and I think you're going to be using it to, like, you play it, you -2, you then +2, you -2, you +2, you -2, you +2. You're using it to make big, beefy threats, not to combo out into victory, because you could probably combo out faster. Alright. Mordenkainen's polymorph. No, he's polymorphing as Doggo, but he was a good boy. Ah. Alright, until after a target creature becomes a dragon with base power toughness 4/4 and gains flying. I mean, this is a card. In limited, sometimes this is useful. It's instant speed, so it's a combat trick. Constructed. Dragon. The dragon tag has to be very important for this to see play in constructed, I feel. And in flavor-wise, I don't think... Yeah, Mordenkainen's polymorph, at least, is not a spell in 5th edition. Mordenkainen doesn't... As far as I know, doesn't have a connection to dragons. I could be wrong there. I don't know, it just feels weird. It just feels like they want to add a spell from Mordenkainen, and they wanted to add polymorph, but couldn't add the polymorph spell itself. Pixie Guide. 2 mana, 1/3 flyer. If you would roll 1 more dice, instead, roll that many +1 and ignore the lowest. So, this is actually funny. I'm going to talk about D&D lore right now. So in 5th edition, one of its big breakthroughs is that people hate numbers. They hate having to keep track of +5, -2, +3, -4. Like, they hate having to keep track of all these little feats. So they just added a simple, you either have advantage or disadvantage. If you have advantage, you roll 2 dice, take out the lowest. If you have disadvantage, you roll 2 dice, take out the highest. So this is them granting an advantage. This is literally, you have advantage when you roll d20s. You roll 2, take out the lowest. Funny thing is, it's actually a variant rule to be able to get multiple advantages. And basically to have multiple rolls, which Pixie Guide can do. I think that's kind of funny that they actually added the variant rule of like, oh, this is too complicated for D&D. But people that play Magic the Gathering, oh no, this is perfectly makes sense. You just throw it in, it works perfectly in Magic the Gathering. Because anyone who's playing this game could deal with the complications of multi-advantage. I just think that's funny. Limited, 2 mana, 1/3 flying will probably okay. Like, the fact that it has flying probably pushes it to be good enough in limited. Constructed, it's are you the roll dice deck? And is the roll dice deck not aggressive enough? Yep. Alright, that kind of solves it. Power of Persuasion. So, 3 mana sorcery. On 1 through 9, you return target creature to its owner's hand. 10 through 19, return it to the top or bottom of their library. Or you gain control of it until the end of your next turn. So here's the interesting thing. The Nat 20, if it's a combo creature, is actually not good, not better than the 10 through 19, which is actually hilarious. The 1 through 9 is actively bad. It's an unsummon for 2 additional mana. So the 10 through 19 is basically what this card needs to be. So this is one of the cards that I don't like, because whether or not you roll well decides whether this card is even okay. Limited, you actually need... I don't want to play this in my limited deck unless I already have like 2 Pixie Guides for some reason, which I don't think you see very much in limited. Constructed, I don't want to see this as a dice deck, because if you roll badly, it's very bad. And it's not like that Nat 20 is good, but I don't want that dice deck to be about Nat 20s. Flavor-wise, I mean, I guess if you roll Nat 20 and Persuasion, there's the whole thing, but technically Nat 20 doesn't confirm success. It's just, my whole thing is it does confirm success, but I don't let them roll if it would, if it's one of those situations. I don't like the card. I understand it. I don't like it. Ray of Frost. So, this is their, so white and black each have a hate card for each other, and blue and red each have a hate card for each other. I don't know if green has any of this, but this is, the red one. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. It's a 2 mana flash spell. And if it's red, it also taps it as it comes into play, and it loses all of its abilities. Like, I think this is something that you sideboard. In limited, after you attack, you then tap it down. I would say with limited, you need to have, in limited, you need to be holding up the 2 mana for something. If you have an instant speed to hold up your mana for, and then you switch out to Ray of Frost, this makes sense. Otherwise, not really good in limited. For D&D, this isn't really the effect. Ray of Frost slows down their movement speed, but it's really a damaging spell. Fair enough, they can't have damage. Every damaging spell can't be a damaging spell, because that would just ruin... We can't have a super burn deck because D&D has damage because it's a different game. You know? Rhyme Shield, Frost Giant, Ward 3. Not really much to say. Limited works. 5 mana, 4/5, Ward 3 is a very powerful. It could be a finisher, if it wasn't for all those dragons. Constructed, not gonna see play, just not good enough. Story wise, Rhyme Shield is a theme. Frost Giants are people. Like, they're big, scary monsters. Frost Giants are warriors. Like, yeah, the lore tells you everything. I can't really tell you anything the lore doesn't. Oh, hey, look, he has a pet. So he has a pet polar bear. Usually they're white wolves or winter wolves. That's another theme that they usually have. Alright. Skin of Stygia. Flash. You choose like a creature, and you either tap it, or you tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its next untap step. The fact that this is a 3 mana 2/1 with Flash with that ability is the really important part. In the D20 deck, if it's more mid-range, it can work. But really, this is a 3 mana 2/1 with Flash, and that's why you play it. And that's good enough to see play in Limited. Constructed, I'm not sure. We really need to see that Roll20 deck later, and it's not seeing play while Throne of Eldraine. It has too many pieces that needs to figure out that I don't think we're going to figure out in time. Stygia, Stygia real fast is, so with the Tiefling backgrounds, if you, in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which is a book that you can grab, there's different versions of Tiefling, and one of the versions is the, like there's Summons of Asmodeus is the most common Tiefling, but if they're from Stygia, they have Ray of Frost as their cantrip. So notice how Stygia has a lot of the effect of Ray of Frost. That's where that's where that name comes from, for lore real quick. Secret Door. So, 1 mana, 0/4, tap 5, venture to the dungeon as a sorcery. If this wasn't sorcery speed, I'd be like, maybe Constructed? But nah, I'm not even sure if this is a limited, given that it's sorcery speed. It's just so much mana for sorcery speed. That's the problem. There's a 6 mana for drawing a card on a 2/1. Other than that, secret passages are just something you find. Yeah, it's just part of being in a dungeon. So it makes sense as venturing into a dungeon. Shocking Grasp. This is a spell. So, as I was talking about advantage, Shocking Grasp is a damaging spell that has advantage if the opponent is wearing metal, which is where the Mythal Armor, Poor Choice, comes in. And it allows you to run away, which makes sense that it reduces the damage you take, and you draw a card, which I think just fits. For if this card sees play, I think in the there might be like a Monk Demi-Lich deck that comes into play. Monk class being a card that we'll see later. I'll explain the deck idea later, but I don't have the cards to craft it, unfortunately. If that deck sees play, this would be just a good cantrip in it, but that's the only way I see this scene playing Constructed. Limited. It is a combat trick. It is a combat trick. Yeah, could see play. Shortcut Seeker. 4 mana 2/5. When it deals combat damage to a player, venture into the dungeon. This creature attacks, gets blocked by their 3 mana 2/3, and that's it. And that's what happens for 13 turns. So this is just a 4 mana 2/5. Not good enough. If it's not good enough in Limited, it's not good enough in Constructed. Who knows? Maybe we have another limited format like Strixhaven, where it's super weird and not like normal limited formats. I would love that, but I'm not counting on it. Lore-wise, yeah, he's finding a trapdoor just like the Secret Door. Yep. Which, hold up, if he's doing that, shouldn't this have evasion of some sort? Silver Raven. 1 mana, 1/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. So remember I was talking about that blue flood deck with Ilmarith and the other dragon? We have a 1/1 flyer that also gets you to your pieces. Make sure you don't draw too many lands. Make sure you draw enough lands. Make sure you draw your finishers. Make sure you don't draw multiple finishers. Like, that's what Scry does. This is going to... In that deck, this is going to see play. I don't think this sees play until rotation, but blue aggro is going to be a thing, I think. That's cool. And that is cool. Also, if this gets bounced back to your hand, you're super happy to just Scry again. When Soul Knife Spy deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Oh, well, hold up. Silver Raven, I'm pretty sure is, it's a magical artifact that you speak a command word and it becomes a raven for 8 hours. So it's an artifact that basically gives you an animal companion, but with utility instead of power. Yep, flavor done. Alright, Soul Knife Spy. Soul Knives are a new archetype, which, as they say, it has a Psychic Blade, which deals psychic damage with your sneak attack damage. Pretty awesome, but, that sort of stuff. When it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And this is where my theme with the Soul Knife is. Love the Soul Knife when you look at the class in D&D. This is actually my disappointment in D&D. They don't flavor the stuff of the Soul Knife having more mental powers. Like, the Soul Knife, at least lore-wise, is supposed to be psionics is their power, and, like, ripping into the mind. This, you're drawing a card. Like, Soul Knife in there would be more they discard a card. Whatever, I'm happy with this. Limited, 3-mana 3/2 is sometimes good. You play this because you can, not because you have. You play this because you have to, not because you want to, sort of theme. If it hits, it's awesome, but you're not going to rely on it being hit because it dies to bears. That sort of issue. Constructed, not good enough. That's the theme. Split the party. So I love the flavor. Is just don't, because yeah, was it D&D advice number 1: never split the party. Second advice 2: really don't. Like, that's the whole theme. So yeah, so you choose target player, return half the creatures they control to their hand, rounded up. So the theme is, you get to choose what half of the creatures. This is kind of close to a one-sided board clear. This, if you're facing a token deck, this is a one-sided board clear, basically. This, I think, because of that, I think this is a tech card, but it's a very powerful tech card. It could see play as a tech card again after Throne of Eldraine, but actually maybe, I don't know what deck. It'd have to be a swarmy deck that is in the meta that I can't really think of right now. Limited, good. Everything's a creature game, so being able to just bounce half their board, start swinging in for victory. Like, blue seems to be the tempo deck in Limited, which is really cool. Sudden Insight. Draw a card for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard. Ooh. I like the idea of that. So, this, if you could get this right, this is 6 mana, draw 7 cards at instant speed. And that instant speed is why I think this might even see constructed play. Who knows? This might actually see constructed play, which is really, really cool. Limited, I think it draws 4 cards? The fact that it's instant speed is what makes this playable. Just to be clear, if this wasn't instant speed, I wouldn't even consider it. But because it's instant speed, I think this could see constructed play, this could see limited play. Not sure what deck has space for it, but decks are coming into creation. This is a new set, decks are coming into creation. Lore-wise, lucky draw from the Deck of Many Thieves. Oh boy. I guess that would make a Sudden Insight, but that's... Deck of Many Thieves is a story. We'll get to it when we get to it. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. So Tasha's Hideous Laughter is technically a lockdown spell, kind of like Sleep, but I'm okay with this. So this is a mill card. So I did the math of whether this mill card is good enough. Generally, the problem is, this is the only mill card. Basically, the math I figured out is that you would need 2 of these in Limited to make it useful in Limited. In Constructed, basically, if this card is viable, it's because cards like Lurrus of the Dream Dead are played. So let me explain. This exiles cards from the top of the library until they reveal enough cards with a total mana value of 20. This means that if you're playing a mill deck, the more aggressive your opponent is, the more cheap and low to the ground their cards are, the more viable this card is. So, like Lurrus of the Dream Dead, most of their cards cost 1 or 2 mana. There might be a few 3 mana cards, but most of their cards cost 1 or 2 mana. Tasha's Hideous Laughter does serious damage to the Lurrus deck. Could really, like, take them out with a few plays. And in fact, I actually think if you have a bad matchup against Lurrus decks and the like, you might actually be able to, in a control deck, to just have 4 Tasha's Laughters in your sideboard and bring them in against Lurrus decks and things of that nature. I think that's actually a possibility, because against those kinds of decks, Tasha's Hideous Laughter mills so many cards. Thing is, otherwise, like, the math that I did, I could be wrong, but the way I saw it, against a regular just mid-range deck like Limited mostly is, this mills something like 11 to 12 cards, I think, which for 3 mana is pretty good, but you need to mill, what was it? I think the math I did is the game needs to last 10 turns and you need to mill 20 cards. And that will allow you to just do mill in Limited. And so if this also had Millstone in the format or something of that nature, I don't know, maybe they added Millstone and I didn't see it, but they would need, this needs just a little more support for this to see play in Constructed, or to see play in Limited. This card is not really a Limited player. Constructed, the thing is, you put this in your deck that kind of mills. So like, for example, rogues with Rune Crab and such might put this in their deck if they're having problems with the Lurrus matchup or something like that. With people that have escape cards, so they want cards in their graveyard anyways. It might see play there. Otherwise, I don't see it. Like, it's a good tech card. It needs its support. It does act as support. It's very much, depending on how fast the meta is, it's very dependent on the opponent's deck, is my main issue. If it's just a regular deck, it's not good enough. Like, if it's a mid-range deck, it's not good enough. If it's aggressive, or if it's a Lurrus deck, I think it's good enough. If there's a mill deck. If it's Lurrus, and, like, that's the thing. That's the problem. That, I don't know. This is a card that, whether it's good or not, depends on the meta. Trickster's Talisman. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice this talisman and create a copy of that creature. Ooh. So, I don't know what deck uses this. So, first off, in Limited, it's an equipment. +1/+1 is often good enough. The fact that you may sacrifice it, so you can just equip it to a cheap creature, and then later get a big creature, put it on, and swing in, is awesome. For Constructed, I don't see what slot this takes. I don't see what creature is so important that you make a copy of very quickly. Maybe if this was red-blue, and you equip it to a creature with haste to swing in and immediately get another one. The copy, it doesn't, if it said you create a copy of this creature except it isn't legendary, would be a very different game. Because it's just a copy, like, it's a good card. Don't deny, it's very good and Limited. And in Constructed, if it sees play, I would not be like surprised, but I'd be shocked. I'd be like, I did not expect this to see play. It's good enough, but I don't see anywhere it fits. And there has to be, like, I don't see where this fits. I think it's a good card. So yeah, Lady Luck is also, so quickly about Trickster's Talisman. Lady Luck is the god of, you get Trickery Domain Clerics from it. So that's where that Trickster's Talisman comes. Oh, also, their ability. It's Invoke Duplicity, duh! That's the channel divinity for Clerics of Trickery. Yeah, so that's where the lore comes in. Suddenly the lore became a lot better now that I read it 2 more times. That's awesome. Yeah, it's a Cleric of Trickery. Awesome. True Polymorph. Target artifact or creature becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature. And notice that there's a permanent effect. It's not until end of turn. And that's the theme. So a lot of people were confused about being called True Polymorph instead of Polymorph. So Polymorph is a 4-mana spell that could turn something, could turn a creature into an insect or a dragon or whatever. It turns them into that other theme. True Polymorph is a 9th level spell because it turns them into that other theme until dispelled. It could be permanent if no one ever dispels it. And where Polymorph is limited to creatures and has this one, you could turn a creature into a diamond and then sell off that diamond. You could turn a diamond into a creature and then befriend that creature for a while. Or a rock. That's usually what I do. I turn rocks into creatures, befriend them, and then later I could turn them into a diamond if they get on my nerves. It's a 9th level spell. It's supposed to be hyper powerful. But yeah, True Polymorph is different than Polymorph because it is permanent. It has to be dispelled. And like target artifact or creature, like you turn a creature into treasure, you turn a treasure into creature. Like that's actually what it's used for. So that's actually awesome. This is perfect in flavor of the spell True Polymorph, not the spell Polymorph. So I like that. And that's a lore thing that a lot of people will miss. Why is it called True Polymorph? Because it's a different spell in D&D. Alright, Wizard class. So this brings a lot of this is very similar to the Cleric class, Except where Cleric class succeeds, this fails. So, Cleric class succeeds because that 1 mana gain 1 life is actually a pretty important effect. The 1 mana effect is you have no maximum hand size. We have lands. We have a land that does that in later formats. Like, that's not that powerful. It doesn't really do anything. So, it has, basically this card, if you play it at 1 mana, it's because you literally have nothing else to play at 1 mana. At 3 mana, it then has a divination attached to it. Divination doesn't see play in Constructed. I think that's all I really need to say already this card is basically unplayable in Constructed, which is really sad. Its level 3 is cool, and it's powerful, but involves creatures in a deck that's dirtling around. You need to be able to dirtle around a lot. If you could only gain levels as a sorcery. If this was instant speed, because it's the wizard, I could see this scene playing Constructed. But you can't do it. It has to be sorcery speed. And the deck that wants this needs to leave its mana open for counterspells and the like. And has better card draws. It has better card draws. So, because of that, I don't see this scene playing Constructed. In Limited, 4 mana, draw 2 cards with a mana sink ability later on is probably good enough. But you're really just playing for that 5 mana ability. This is your finisher. Yeah. Weird card. Weird card. For story-wise, yeah, the wizard having the spellbook being the maximum hand size, then they learn more knowledge, then they just become more powerful. It's kind of a story of a wizard, I guess. Wizard's spellbook. Hey, here's the spellbook I was talking about. Alright. Exile, target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard, roll a d20. Activate only as a sorcery. 1 or 9, you copy it and may cast it. 10 or 19, you copy it and you cast it for only 1. And the natural 20, you copy every single card exiled with Wizard Spellbook, and you cast the copies without paying their mana costs. So this is an example of me disliking the natural 20 mechanic. That, you could actually be building up a instant sorcery pile that once that natural 20 rolls, you win the game, which means you'll be banking on, please get me a natural 20. Alright, you have 2 turns to get me a natural 20, and I don't want that kind of thing in Constructed. Alright, Limited, if you have the instance of sorceries, then this is a bomb. Constructed, if you have the instance or sorceries, do you have the 7 mana for this? Like, keep in mind, you have to pay 7 mana, then you still have to cast the copy. It doesn't work. I think you're going to be playing Demi-Leches, and these two, and Demi-Lech and Wizard Spellbook, fight each other for the spot. And you're just going to play Demi-Lech and Constructed. That's my general rule of it. Love the idea, love that the spells are all gate stacked together for the natural 20. Except for the... I like it until you get to the fact where the natural 20 is game ending. Maybe if it's... You could copy any card exiled with Wizard Spellbook and may cast the copy without paying its bad cost. If it was 1 spell instead of 30, instead of 5 or whatever, then maybe I'd like the natural 20 effect. I think it's bad for the game to have effects that hyper explosive. D&D it makes sense because if the boss dies randomly to a triple critical hit, that's the players doing awesome. In Magic the Gathering, that's the game being obsoleted for a few dice rolls. That's the difference. So that's why I don't like natural 20s being super powerful in Magic the Gathering. That's for Dungeons & Dragons, not MTG. You come to a river. So you can either fight the permanent current, which is a return spell, or you get a buff to make a creature unblockable. So this is actually really cool, where, remember when I was talking about the blue swarm deck? This could help you get the finishing blow in, or it could help you bounce, if they're also swarming, this could help you get the finishing blow, and if they're just playing a big threat, this gets rid of the threat for a turn. So this could actually see play in that mono blue swarm deck that I've been talking about, could see play. Good enough. So, could see Constructed. Limited. It's really hard to get an effect like this strong enough. You might play it. You might play 2 of them. But not every deck wants this. Not every deck can capitalize on the time of returning a permanent. Not every deck can capitalize on a single hit. So it's can you capitalize on this card, whether or not you do it. You find the villain's lair. So it's a counter spell, but if they have nothing to counter, you could instead draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So note, learn their secrets is bad. You're not even card cycling. You're losing a card in the process. So this card is a cancel with a benefit if they have nothing to cancel. This is like that. This is like that one card that's a cancel that you can instead cycle for 2. And this is, I would say, actually worse than that one, but it's better in a combo deck. Constructed, not really seen play. Limited, you don't want it, but you'll play it. And yeah, lore-wise, you kind of get the sense you found the Villard's Lair. I think the cool thing about these cards is that the lore is self-explanatory. You see a guard approach. Distract the guard, you tap a creature, or target creature you control gains hexproof. In Limited, this is very much... So Constructed, I don't think this sees play, unless that 1 mana is so important. But, yeah. It's, again, one of those things... So it is a hexproof. It stops a combat trick. It stops a burn spell. But not every deck has that, so you have to capitalize on tapping down a creature, is generally whether or not you see a guard approach is good. That's my guess for Limited. Not every deck can capitalize, some can. Yuan-Ti Malison. Alright. So these are the infiltrators amongst the Yuan-Ti tribe, if I'm correct. So, it's a 2-mana 2-1, can't be blocked while attacking alone, and when it deals combat damage to a player, you venture. Again, this is a thing, for Constructed, if there is kind of a mid-range blue-green adventure deck that goes through the realm of the Mad Mage, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, I think this is a good way to get recurring venturing, because you're not really trying to deal damage, you're just using this as a way to get recurring venturing, and then it also deals damage, because it's attacking alone. That's awesome. Limited, always good. It's a bear that can venture to the dungeon and get consistent damage through. Like, amazing and Limited. In Constructed, it's also possible if that weird blue-green mid-range venture actually works. I'm not sure if it does. Anyways, that's it for the blue cards. Ooh. Sorry if I rambled a bit, but I did enjoy that. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll be back later with Black. That will be awesome.